but I don't know,
Well,
I
there's
really
the
don't.
issue. If this is as devastating as it seems to be, and there appears to be in another cycle within these cycles of cataclysms, in other words, every other one appears to be not quite so bad,
right.
and then we're at the point of one of the bad ones, unfortunately. And if you look at things like the Narmer Plate, we're at the 12th cycle there. They actually record 11 previous cataclysms. And the only other group to do that is actually this northern Siberian myth that records also 11 previous cataclysms. And that even actually records the one where Siberia was slipped in under the ice and has a little bit in there about having to flee from the ice that overcame them in just days and just simply wouldn't cease, and how they had to basically run as a tribe from it. But no, it's all quite frightening. The idea of survival, though, does exist because we've done it before. I'm of the opinion that humans go back at least 8 million years on this planet, and there's demonstrable evidence from my relatives' area in California of this. I mean, they used to do gold mining in the area, and they'd go down to bedrock, or not bedrock, to layers that had been covered over by mountains 8 million years ago, and they would find modern Homo sapiens skeletons in the gravel beds. Some of them even with clothing still sort of hanging on. So, they didn't put them in there any other way. They weren't swept into the gravel recently. And so if that's the case, then we have to say, well, we've been through it so repeatedly that you're probably correct. There was probably a master civilization maybe 40 or 50,000 years back that set things in motion in terms of trying to preserve this, which basically leads us up to the perversions of the Freemasonry idea today.
And the creation of what religions are really about, which is passing on this message and trying to make people, in a way, fearless, because one day you're going to have to be fearless to survive this kind of thing. How many days long does this take, do you think? This first one, are we going to get hit by a coronal mass ejection, and then we're going to get hit by the other things? Or
it's all part of a process. There will probably be a bow wave, and then that instantly or completely or being driven by it, pushing it, will be the CME, and then we'll get the flips of the magnetics, and then the crustal action. And there's some suggestions that 40 or 50 days is not unlikely. However, the actual flip of the crust is probably a 40 to 50 hour process based on my reading of the historical records that are available to be gotten at in this. The issue is the whole process, though, can be thought of as probably a year long, because the build-up to it is quite exceptional. I had the good fortune when I was a kid to be, or bad fortune, I don't know, whatever, to be stuck in Germany as one of the earliest of the dependents of the occupation forces, and was forced to read a lot because there just wasn't a whole lot else to do. And I came across a bunch of books that were stored in this old SS building that we used as a library where we were stationed there. And some of these books were really interesting, and they had translations of languages I'd never seen before as a kid. And they were done for the German military. And it was strange books, and some of them were obviously done by people that were prisoners of the Germans. One, a British fellow who made annotations in his translations as he went along. And he translated a bunch of Sanskrit. And I read these marvelous stories about this civilization, which I now know to be probably the Harappan civilization, that were discussing about this particular village, and it was from the viewpoint of this headmaster who had all of this stuff set down, and he was the guy who controlled the size of the bricks. That's how basically their hierarchy was in the masonry, but it was about building the houses and stuff. But in any event, he talks about a period where the houses fell over because of a big earthquake. No big deal, they rebuilt them. Well, 3 weeks later, they all fell over again because of another big earthquake, so they rebuilt them again. And it goes on and on this way until about 3 or 4 months later, they're getting an earthquake a day, and finally everybody's living in tents because there's just no point in rebuilding the houses anymore. And it was then that the translator of that particular book tied that over to another book that he translated for the Germans that was related to the myth of Manu, the survivor by a boat. And so, going back, they were intimately and desperately interested in this information.
And that carries forth into NASA. NASA is desperately interested in this information. Of course, the Nazi German scientists were at the beginning of NASA, which is another incredibly interesting subject. We'll be right back. I'm Jay Weidner. You're listening to Smoke and Mirrors Radio Hour. We're talking to Cliff High. We'll be back for the crescendo, the allegro or something of the show. And we're back. I'm Jay Weidner, Smoke and Mirrors, you know all that. We're heard everywhere. We're heard nowhere. Who knows? Anyway, we're here with Cliff High, and we're talking about some very serious stuff here. And I think you guys should be listening, because it may get down to surviving here. So the Nazis were really into this, and I think it's what I think happened is, I'm trying to remember his name. I think his name was La Plagnon. He was a French researcher. He went to Mexico in 1890s, and I think he found the long count calendar and brought it back and told his Freemasonic buddies, the real guys, not the guys that are in these lodges, but the real guys, and they got a little panicked because their numbers told them that the thing wasn't going to happen until 2440 around there, and so they couldn't reconcile the two. And the entire 20th century, that sounds crazy, is a direct result of their fear of what is coming.
Their fear that they were wrong in their math.
Exactly, and it went into a panic state, created the Nazis, the Zionists, everything was a creation by them for an end game. That there was no Cold War. They were puppet mastering both sides to conquer the hyperdimensional aspects of the saucer technology, and I call it Project Good. Good stands for Get Out of Dodge, and I think that I know it sounds crazy, but I think they're abandoning the Earth. They're so dang afraid of what's going on.
Well, there's the other issue though too. If they're just planning on trucking out in space, that doesn't do them any good. Especially in anything that's electromagnetic, because the level of magnetics that we're talking about is just going to be huge.
No, I think that they're burying themselves on Mars, actually. It's the only thing that they can do. There's a lot of proof of a lot of weird things going on Mars, and I think that it's been going on for like maybe the last 40 years or so.
Well, and also, unlike Earth, Mars, if you wanted to tunnel in and be underground when this occurred, Mars would be the place to go. Its relationship to the sun and relative to Earth is slightly further out, so it may not be impacted as seriously. Plus, it doesn't appear to have the tectonic issues that we do.
It doesn't. There's no tectonic plates. There's no magnetic field. At least I don't think there is. And, I think that's what's going on. And I think it's pretty obvious, actually, to anyone watching. And furthermore, the texts, the ancient Indian texts say that the elites escape and go somewhere. And they actually name the planet, which is Mahar, which is pretty close to Mars. So I don't know. I think that might be the explanation for a lot of what's going on. Everything from flying saucers to
all the other goofy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, all the conspiracies could be united. This is the grand unified theory of conspiracies.
Right.
You see, and basically they're just getting out of Dodge and doing everything they can to get out. And I don't know. Do you think that they can be safe underground? Like
there's issues in many different levels. If you're talking multiple generations, no, I don't think that's possible. And then you may have to, because who knows how long it's going to take here. There's some indications that volcanism should be extraordinary for 30 or 40 years after this event. So coming back in that period of time wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So there's all of those kind of things. Plus, if I'm correct, humans right now are responding in the way that Gurdjieff referred to with the sololuneus, right? We're getting a little wacky from this extra input from the sun. And when that magnetic wave goes through, we may indeed find that the 6 or 7% of the populace that's electromagnetic sensitive could be in a world of hurt, trying to, maybe even experiencing this thing as a gravity wave, or it may be so severe that we all feel it that way. and it's going to cause, dislocations mentally for a great number of people. Just, I'm assuming, but it may be so large that it could be virtually everyone, no matter where you are.
I think so. Actually, I think I don't know. I think I'll tell you what. You're one of the few guys that I've ever heard who has noticed the change in the color of the sun. And I'm an amateur photographer, and I've been photographing the sun for about 45 years. And I'm telling you, I have had to change my filters because the sun's getting so bright. And I'm adding now 3 neutral density filters on to get good images of the sun, sunspots and things. And the sun has gone from a yellow from when I was a kid to a very bright white right now.
Right, and as I'm fond of saying, Superman would have no powers if he showed up today. He'd be in a white sun, just like his home planet. So it's like, No, I did a whole series of sun experiments